Okay, so I'll start with a quick outline of the talk. Setting where I work to give you the context, to understand the problem and the possible solution and reasons for it. Problem identification, causes and the reasons possible, of course. So, action plan, what I did to change I brought about to address these challenges we had, or I had, results, and then the final conclusion, some comments on the way forward from change I made. So my context, I teach Mathematics 186. It's an EEP course. It's a degree program. It's a year module, so which has its advantages. So it's for students who didn't make or qualify for mainstream entry registration. So they have the option to register for the EEP. It's mainly a great presentation is engineering students who go on to engineering, and then a small percent, like 10% is will go on to sciences, BSc. Yes, sorry, mathematical science, BSc, computer sciences, and pure science, physics, and so on. So in the first semester, to give you context, the change I brought about was from second semester on. So that's why the context I'll set now is for the first semester. All assessment opportunities are compulsory, were compulsory. There were quite a few. So it's quite a rigid assessment system that I had in place. For many reasons, they are new to university, have many challenges. They are first generation students, many out there. So I felt I don't want to make any big changes from what they are used to. But of course, it's also a different setting, so introduce change slowly. So we have I had online quizzes daily. The idea was to prepare before the lecture. So it's just a few videos and then a quiz on the videos. You actually see if they watched it. I did penalize them severely if they didn't do it. So it was, like I said, it was compulsory. There were 3 lectures, so before, so 3 times a week. Then every week as well, they have tutorials, a 2-hour tutorial on a Friday. And then on the Monday, the following Monday, is the tutorial test. There wasn't enough time in the 2 hours for the tutorial test, so we scheduled for the Monday, which worked well. But so once again, everything's compulsory. Then there are 3 tests in the first semester, since it's a year module. To compare it to semester modules, I would call it the early assessment test, test 1, the semester test, test 2, and then your exam, test 3. So that was the setting, the assessment. So a lot of weekly stuff, and then throughout the semester. I'll come back to it again. As you can imagine, this will keep you busy, not only marking. If you're fortunate to have markers, but then the admin of finding them and paying them, you have the money. A lot of things concerning that. So here's the problem identified by our second year lecturers, was that they noted that there was a great surprisingly reduced in the average of this second year math students. 60% of the students did not meet 40% average, did not have it. So they could not get entry to exam, which is a semester module. Which was, these lecturers have been lecturing for many years, so they see all different students for all the years that, I mean, over 20 years I would imagine, close to that. But this 1 year, it was last year, the year before, was the first time I think there was this big change in the average. I mean, it couldn't be just a group of students. I mean, the syllabus did change of school, but not to such a degree that it caused this big decline in the averages of such a great group of students. And then personally, from my point of view, maybe from other lectures as well, was this dependency on the Miranda that students have. Yeah, everything that goes with that. So that bothered me, and and that has an effect on the learning as well. So what happened is not only do lecturers the progress, but the students themselves they were worried. They're like, I passed first year, maybe with a good mark, X%, Now I come to second year, now I can't even get 40% with the same study methods, the same everything. So what am I doing wrong? They don't understand. So they feel like this, and the lecturers also feel like this. So we had a meeting, and then just quite nice from the department side to call a meeting and to inform everyone what was going on, and maybe find out what's the reason or the cause of this. Possible reasons, the lack, maybe the first thing that was pointed out positively would be the lack of academic independence from the student side. The second year assessment model is different from the first year one. They are given greater freedom, and I understand not every assessment opportunity was compulsory. So the possible reason is they don't know how to handle this freedom now of not everything being compulsory. They're so used to it from the high school, and now they first year, now they come to second year, now they don't know how to handle it. And that's what possibly is the reason. And then more from a content point of view is that the superficial, which could have been the memos being readily available, would add to that. And then you see, I need your help. Causes of that is, I believe, and that's why I brought change from my second semester on, is how my assessment was set such that it formed this assessment-dependent learning. They only learn if they know there's going to be assessment that counts for mark. And I mean, so your own personal as a lecturer or academic, if you want to support this type of learning. I did not want to. Learning shouldn't just happen because there's going to be a test on it. So that's why I made the change. And then also this complete memoranda have been, as I mentioned, readily available. So you have assessment running here in front, and then your learning dragging on the heels. It's the kind of idea. So the plan that I changed that brought about aren't major, so it's quite simple. First thing is I made many of the assessment opportunity optional from the second semester on. So when they come back the first day from the second semester after their July holiday, I said, okay, we have to talk. This semester things are going to change. We don't need to panic, but things will change for this reasons and so forth, motivation and everything. I'll explain now exactly what I did, what I made optional and what I did not. And then provide incomplete memoranda. So those would be, instead of the whole, all the steps, you'll only have the final answer. Let me show the final answer, for example, through the question. So in the second semester, let's look specifically. No more online quizzes. So before the lecturer, there were quizzes. No more. I removed that completely. All tutorials and tutorial tests are optional. So they can choose if they want to come to a tutorial, which is typically a setting for those who don't know. It's a set of questions or problems on a page, different types of different levels, easy, medium, and hard. And you can alternate between group work and individually, so it depends on how your tutorial is set up. And then they have 2 hours with the help of myself, the lecturer, and 2 tutors that can ask questions. So that's our tutorial setting. I made that setting optional as well as all the tutorial tests. So everything is optional, that's what it meant. A test, early assessment test for the second semester was also optional. So I set a test for the evening and then an optional. This now we have over the year, we have 5 tests for the course, for the module, so this one has to be mandatory. There was a 4th test, which would be the second semester test, it was mandatory, and then the exam test was also mandatory. So there were only had 2 mandatory assessment opportunities, big ones now. And the idea was to cut some of these strings now, give them greater freedom, choice. If you want them to learn how to handle choice or to work with choice, you have to give it to them, and then they must learn to do it with it. So that's this opportunity to give them that freedom. The process, what it entails specifically, communication is vital. It's very important to talk to your students, not only on the first day, continuously with every lecture, because now they're nervous. If the trains are nervous, can they handle it? Will they cope? with all this freedom. I always joke and tell every lecture I remind them, use your freedom sparingly. Because otherwise, yeah, everything is free. So I explain the process in detail, motivation, and why you doing it is important. They want to understand why. Why was the first semester everything was this way? Now in the second semester, why are you doing? You hate us? Are you angry? Did we do something wrong? That type of thing. They don't understand why you're doing it. And then pros and cons of why you're doing it. And then motivation. So every lecture, remind them, use your freedom sparingly. But they understand it. Beginning, you'll see now, maybe not, but later on they get to it. Results, let's look at some of the results. Didn't load. Oh, so the role, yeah, there was a, let's see, this didn't load. Average for the first test. So this is test 4 now of the second semester. You can't see it now, but so the average dropped quite significantly from the first semester. What the diagram would have shown is the first semester for the 3 tests I had, the average was around 60, 58, 62, 59, so around 60. And now it dropped. So it's test 4 now in the second semester to 46. So quite a big. Then of the 80 students that I have, more than half failed. No 50%. So the first test was a waking up call for them. I think they used it really too sparingly. But no, that's how they learn. They make a mistake, and now they learn from it. So, unfortunately, they won't show you. The graph doesn't come up now. But it would be great to see how the curve normalized. So, for the final test in the exam, it went up to 52%. And more interesting, how many passed for that one? 33. Previously it was 74. So the average went up. So for test 3, test 4, the optional one, it was 44. Then it went up to 46 for test 5, and the final, this one is then 52. So they did each test. The average went up. I believe as they got used to and probably started working using their freedom sparingly. Let's look at each semester now compared to each other. So number of students 83, and then 3 didn't make it or did not go on to the second semester. So only had 80 students in the second semester. The average, there we go, over each semester, a drop by 10%, which I'm not surprised. Of these, how many got passed, 50 or higher? Out of the 83, 67, so 84% passed. So I have to mention the first semester we do pre-calculus, so it's content that they are familiar with. Second semester is pre-calculus. They do calculus but at school, but this is a far more theoretically based. So limits, continuity, differentiation, integration. So new content, theorems and proofs, also this new. So it's a more difficult semester. So the content and the questions are more difficult, it's true. But that's what they can expect in their next year. Increase, so it's really interesting, so I wanted to know, having brought this change about, did everyone's marks drop? Or were there a few, what happened? So, no, the question is no. 70s of the 80 marks increased. Of the greatest range of increase, surprisingly, is 29%. The students' marks for average for the first semester, and for the second semester, these marks increased by 29%. It's also the opposite. There was quite a drop higher than that. So there are students also dropped quite significantly. But it shows you that maybe the system or the change did benefit some students more. They liked it or just better with their personality. Of these 17s who mark increased, we want to know, is it the strong students or the weak? What type of student is? It's 16 of those were all above 50. So it's your stronger students. Those are the ones whose marks decrease with this change we read about. At-risk students, so that's the question I wanted to look at. I define at-risk student is a student with an average between 45 and 55. So just around 50. So they could, they're at risk of that failing. There are 19 of those in the first semester. We'll look at a schematic now, a diagram of these, and let's look at the change that happened over the semesters. Out of those 19 who had risk, only 6 passed. So the system does not favor at-risk students, if we didn't see. So that is one of the concerns, is that it does not. Let's see what comes up and what does it. There was a schematic of the at-risk students, and then for the test. Okay, let's look at, so the conclusion, the point I was to make is that it did not, unfortunately, benefit the at-risk students. The other question I had was, now the tutorials and tutorial tests are not compulsory or optional. Let's see what effect that had. So I looked at the tutorial test. I have the data for 8. Attendance. So out of the 80, the number that attended, and as a percentage. So you can see, originally they attend almost everyone, but then as the semester continues, the attendance drops, which is not uncommon. Interestingly, well, or maybe not so, is that the averages quite low initially, then around 60, below 60, and then that kind of actually went up as you could go on. Now, if you just understand, the reason for that is the strongest students are the ones who keep on coming. So the weakest students don't come, so the average doesn't go down. So that's why you see the averages going up initially, when everyone's still coming. Now let's look at the students, the 80. So now the number indicates not the tutorial test number, but how many students attended that number of tutorials. So one student attended one tutorial, and then he or she did not pass. One student attended 2 tutorials. It could be any 2 because it's optional, so the order is not important. He or she did not pass. 7 students attended 3 tutorials. 1 passed. 8 of 8 students who attended 4, only 3 passed. So as you attend more tutorials, it would seem 17 students attended all 8, and 16 of them passed. So it would seem that if you did come, your chances are much higher to come to more tutorial tests. You're right, more tutorial tests, that you would pass. But also not guaranteed, as you see there, someone came to all, wrote all, but still failed. Conclusions to end off. What this model requires, so it's not a lot of change, it's more change on paper than it is actually physical change for you as a lecture to bring about. It does have less marking. It's more, you have to be more betrokken, is the Afrikaans, weer studenten. I have the privilege of I can actually go to my tutorials. I'm there for the 2 hours on Fridays. I know not all lecturers can do that. They do, students do appreciate, you do get to know your students better. I mean, seeing them for an hour every day for a lecture, and then you have to run out to the next lecture. You can't actually interact with your students. You can't properly answer a question as you should. So I find that 2 hours on a Friday is the best time. They get to know you, get to know them, to actually really help students and see what they're struggling with. And they do ask questions. With the memoranda that are not available, you are running up and down there like crazy. Those 2 hours fly by. Communications, motivation, and support. Maybe more so than you would have if you did not have it. So I would say you should expect that change. What does Model seeks to provide? Why? As I said, greater academic independence and freedom, and they must learn to use that freedom, how to work with it. Deeper understanding, not making those memos available with the complete ones, so that forces them to ask you, and they do. They complain at the start, but then after a few weeks they start complaining and they get used to not having a memo and they start working actually. Because they know they can't get it from anyone. I'm not going to give it. No one's give it. Tutors also don't give it. So, and it's less administration. It's true. What I would like to with this maybe model, if it's possible, is see how I can support those at-risk students, since this model does not to this extent help. It's more inclined for the stronger students in that fact. However, I would like to believe that regardless, at least they had the opportunity now to choose. If they did so wisely or not, it's another matter, but at least you gave them the opportunity to choose, and then they can expect that in the next year when they are confronted with the same opportunity. Now it's round 2. It's not the first time that they have this opportunity to choose. And then, thank you. That's from my side. Thank you for your attention. Any questions?
Yes, any questions for John? I was just wondering whether the benefits outweigh the versus in the hard area. It seems like also involved in EP.
Yes.
We can have a lot of at-risk students. I would be concerned if I had a lot of students that, given that freedom, in a way, I think there's many other ways that one can give them a choice. I would use my students and say, choose when you want to write the test. Instead of you're not writing the test, because I can tell you at this point in time, I've been fearful.
Yes, that picture I told you.
And I was wondering if they've got this backlog now. How do I have to catch up in their second year? So I think the issue is not necessarily, from my perspective, that it is assess or don't assess. I've read the certificates here, and we specifically also said junior students is in need of external guidance. They may learn best if the tutor chooses the patient and the topics. And I've experienced the same thing specifically. Give them stronger guidance, but give them more opportunity to think in the classroom, discuss things, and I specifically also use assessment. But the classroom is never a lecture. The classroom is the questions and then the group discussions, group tests and stuff. I find that that's more beneficial. So personally, I don't have enough information. I would still not be convinced that that would be the way I go.
It could be that this maybe suits one subject matter better than the other. So I teach mathematics, I said. It might not be same for biology or physics or chemistry.
Sorry, but wasn't your result still that the at-risk students in mathematics did not perform?
Yes.
So if the mathematics in the EPP is still many at-risk students, aren't you really not benefiting the few that in any case are going to work on their own? You always get them, but in the EPP program, you should focus on the needs of the at-risk students, give them like structure and then in that process guide them to freedom, but not even foster van hulle kennis wat hulle nodig gaan hê as 'n fondasie, foundation for their next year.
Just 2 comments. They're all at-risk students to start off with first. So maybe we should just put that on the table. These are just more at-risk inside that group of failing EDP. So that's the first thing. I think the other thing we need to bring into the conversation is how they would normally have performed in the second semester, even though it's a different set of material, which they typically find more difficult.
Yes.
And then something I would just like to leave on the paper is that we have to figure out a way, and maybe this is not one thing yet, but the risk is that we just postpone the problem to second year, where suddenly that place is hard, the support is missing. They still have a first year to catch up speed, and then they get stuck there. So we've got to figure out how to do that, and this was an attempt to figure that out because there's a specific problem that was located higher upstream, and EDP cannot cuddle the students now stay in the first year, and then they get lost later on. So we're trying to figure out a way to get all that.
I just think it would be a combination of factors, and in order to get the students to a sense of responsibility. And it's not necessarily, that could be one of many, but then they have to be guided in the process.
Maybe to add to that, so that was last year. This year, it's now we're on the second semester, so I also brought change about. The first semester was exactly the same, everything was mandatory compulsory. Now in the second semester this year, based on these results and findings that I saw from last year, I did not say everything was not compulsory or optional. I said any 5, just 5 of your tutorial tests will count, and you can choose which 5 you come in. So I give them freedom, but not as much as last year, because I think they drowned some of them. So now I put a little bit of structure in again, still making some of the tutorial tests compulsory, but now I give them a few. They can choose which 5. And if they write more than 5, then I take the best 5. So that's changed. I'm trying now to address. And now I will compare and hope maybe, and that will show that the students this now maybe did benefit them more when I just said everything was optional.
I think this is an extremely high risk experiment. The results are known. I think that 6 top implementations, all of them assess students every week, up to 5. Why would that not be necessary?
Well, we just saw what happened in the second year. Are we just postponing the
I'm
problem?
asking you, why does MIT, Harvard, RTI, probably the top 3 universities in the US, Newton, one of the top engineering universities in Europe, why do they assess their students every week?
Well, up to
the whole undergraduate program? Why? If it's not necessary.
what I can tell you, what I can tell you is we are not Auxin in Europe and out. We have our own problems, we are our own country, which is unique. So we should have our own unique solution, I would say. We can look at other top performing universities, but doesn't mean their model is perfect for our country, for our situation.
There's a suggestion that was made at the faculty level. In science, we had a discussion and people felt that we were not allowing students to develop because we are controlling their assessment. And maybe just to add to that, they weren't not assessed. They just to choose not to use the assessments. I think we've learned from this, and John has said that in this year's round, he has changed that. But I would want to see a student that cannot work independently being successful right up to 4th year in engineering.
I hear that ideal, but why do the top engineering universities in the world assess these students weekly?
Can I just comment that you've got assessment of learning and assessment for learning. Assessment of learning is an assessment at the end you fail, you pass. If I don't assess my students on a regular basis in my EDP, which we create a nice environment, it's not a very stressful environment, immediately when I get those results, before I go to my class on Monday, I can clearly see that elasticity is still something that they struggle with. So in a way, they do take control of the curriculum. Because when I walk into a class, I don't go and lecture a class. I took that, saw where their problems were, and we addressed that in the class and saw that out. So in a way, they can take control of the curriculum. But I'm concerned to think of not having that knowledge, walking into a class, teaching them a principle that half of them know, half of them don't know, half of that level, half of that level. So in a way, if you use assessment for learning, assessment is a tool to improve the learning so that we see the misconceptions and the gaps. And again, I'm going to not agree with you. Because if this is assessment for learning, then you want assessment, but assessment is in different ways. It's not like a test that you're going to write a multiple choice, and it could be assessment where you really look at their reasoning and thinking through these concepts. So again, I am concerned that could be just the way that you would want to do it, especially in the program. Assessment is one of my major things to determine where my students' misconceptions are and to link that. And as a matter of fact, assessing them is still getting results at the end of the day. So there may be different subjects, but it has not been a barrier in the sense of giving those students.
This is well-known research since the 1950s. It's not news.
We get Ingrid's response to them and have a question for this.
Yeah, I think my comment is that assessment is in isolation. So while other environments might assess over time, how is it linked to their learning, how they are encouraging students to learn, and their whole teaching approach as well. So the challenge that has been noted here is that assessment is used far too often as an attendance register. The students see it as that. The students give us feedback to say that they cannot focus on learning within the tutorial because they are stressed about writing a little test that's multiple choice, that's multiple tutors, and there's no impact on the lecture itself. So the move is more to say that the assessment must be to inform where the students have their gaps. They should be informed of that, but we need to also provide them with mechanisms of how to fill those gaps. So it's more than just the only looking at assessment. I think assessment in isolation is not really ideal. Yeah.
I think that is, I was going to linger it about it, and it was really, that is the background to this. It's lots of tutorials every week with assessments at the end of it, which serves to force students to be there. But, as Jacques said, there's still room for looking at this and figuring out where this fits in. So he's presenting the assessment part of it, but it's part of the bigger looking at how to get students motivated. I think we should not lose focus on the fact that probably the previous year the results didn't look that different because the second semester differs markedly from the first semester in terms of content. So probably if you were to go back to, I don't know if you've done a drop to the previous year's second semester results, you'll see a drop in performance and you'll see similar results for at-risk students. So all this is doing, it's not helping them more than in the past. It's not necessarily, we can't have this result say that it is, it's disadvantaged doing them more than in the past until we compare the previous year, the previous one.
You must compare the performances. How did they do in the second year? Because that was the point that we asked. And more of them passed the second year or not.
Yeah, so we'll have to look at that eventually as well. That's the next step. It's probably ahead of for a long time.
John, I just want to make it, also just make a comment rather than answer the question. A little bit of background, I'm in the Faculty of Economics, but I'm teaching operations research, which is mathematics. I'm part of a task team looking at assessment at the moment. And it started with Mel de Prier getting to the point that she realized that we over-assess students. And they spent too many times studying for a test rather than to understand the work. So we started from that perspective. And one of the things that we was also discussing is the fact that yes, we're very unique in South Africa in the sense that when they changed mathematics in the school level to not higher grade and standard grade, there's students in the mathematics classes that should take standard grade, but they can't do the maths, so teachers become teaching them recipes. If you see this, you take this, plug this in, rather than they understand. So they get here, they are sort of teach exam papers rather than understanding the work. And now that's the material that we get. We must change that. So what we was thinking about is, yes, there is assessments to encourage learning and assessment where you sort of see where's the student. And we're going to go into a direction where we only give marks for certain assessments. The other assessments, it's there. And the student is supposed to sort of see how he's doing. So we still do the tutorial test type of thing weekly, but it's not part of the final mark. Yeah. But then we expect them to at least attempt a certain percentage of that. And for the first year we're very strict, second year less strict, more freedom, and so on. So it's also a way to look at the stuff in terms of you still do the tutorial test, but you don't take into account that only a percentage of them you then have to attend, whatever. And that can be quizzes, etc. Because we definitely in a situation where students spend too much time studying for and stress for a little test now, and they're not in the other class. So for example, they've got a tutorial at 2 o'clock, they let you give the quiz in the beginning of the tutorial. So now they're not in their 12 o'clock class for applied mathematics or whatever because they're studying for this. So I think you're on the right track in the sense that we have to address these things. And students take responsibility for their own learning.
I don't think by any means make it clear that this is my first attempt. Eh? So I'm sure there will be a lot of over the years, and as we continue, I will change it and just iron out all the little key problems and things. So, but I mean, you have to start somewhere. So this was my first attempt.
We're reaching the end, so I'm going to draw it to a conclusion quickly. But just in linking to what Isabel just said, we just completed outcomes evaluation of the teaching development project in science. And that comment came through repeatedly. I had so many tests, I was so focused on the test, so stressed about the test that I wanted to learn the subject, but I never could. I was surprised because it was the first time I saw that confirmed in research that we had done. And then secondly, in science, more than one first environment has done away with compulsory tutorial tests. Not other compulsory tests, but the tutorial tests. I was quite surprised to speak to 2 other modules recently where the tutorial tests are no longer compulsory. Because we're trying to move away from this over-assessing and to do that constant stress. And again, there's been feedback from students saying, students coming to the tutorial and engaging with tutorial questions, that's lecture feedback, rather than just try to get the answers set up every week.
Because we want to get away from which question should we do for the tutorial test. So we can
That's the tutorial tests.
But this is what this was mostly about.
But what the people overseas do and what.
Yeah, so
that, and we must be open, we mustn't fool ourselves. It's not a simple formula. I understand the problems related to it. But we are not going to have the magical students that learn because they self-motivate. Those students are postgraduate students, not EDP students, not first year students. So we mustn't be idealistic here. Look at what we've learned in history and in the rest of the world. Our students are from Africa, not from Mars. They don't learn and it's an assessment. It's not news.
I do not learn when they assess.
You must assess, yes, but how do you formulate your assessment is key question.
Yeah,
No, but just like my assessments are not working, I'm throwing out assessment is the wrong conclusion. I must assess differently.
But that, I think we said it under, it's in the tutorial test. We didn't throw out all assessments. It was the compulsory
that's maybe the
tutorial.
misconception that it
Yeah,
was.
so it was the tutorial tests that we made non-compulsory, not everything else. And one other test. Because remember there has to be a certain number of marks anyway according to our assessment system. So we stayed within that. But that's the move, that's the change that was starting to be made. And there are quite a few interesting things happening there at the moment with other people that have also done away with tutorial tests but brought in projects. And their experience has been that they've made only every second tutorial compulsory for students to work on the project. And they have online tests which they can do if they want to. Suddenly students come to all the tutorials and they actually work on it. That's mathematics first year, chemistry first year, online weekly tests, I don't know how compulsory they are, but also no longer in the tutorial period, but they do look at the students produce in the tutorial. And they also reporting that students actually come and engage a lot more. So that's part of that bigger drive. It's not part of the drive to do away with assessment in the faculty or first year EDP level, but to try and make our learning opportunities into learning opportunities and not have, and relook assessment broadly. That's another part. But maybe just to clarify what it was about. And I think Jacques made it clear that we learn from previous experience as well. And that one learn from that. And I think we should not be too scared in higher education to try things and burn our fingers. If the results looked very different to previous years, then one can go back and amend that in whichever way is suitable at that point in time. But if we never try new things, then we never go into finding things that aren't working. And I want to applaud people, especially the younger lecturers, who are prepared to set aside the time and try new things, and to come and own up to it if they think it didn't work as well as that hope that other people would probably do it, and learn the lessons from it. So, John, thank you very much. There are feedback forms somewhere if anybody wants to complete some. I'm not going to force you. And then, John, this is for you. Okay.
Another one.
And let me add as well, John was invited at very short notice to do that. So he really did us a favor to do this.
Kan ik maar die recording stop, Annelie?